So from all your experience in being a pediatric neurologist, you have concerns about vaccine safety, which we understand, but a lot of those diseases that we vaccinate against have been more or less either eliminated or greatly reduced, which makes a very good case to vaccinate. Is that true?
I think so, and certainly I vaccinated all my children. I was not certain about the varicella vaccine for a long time.
I agree.
I didn't think that was a major health hazard. But even now there's some evidence that maybe varicella is a little bit worse, or chickenpox that is worse than we thought, and it may be protective for other things. And but chickenpox was one of those diseases that I wasn't totally sure that we should vaccinate for.
We can understand if some kid had some kind of disability, had some reaction to a vaccine, or had some kind of disease like autism, why they're concerned about not knowing the cause and maybe blaming vaccines. But we have no evidence to say vaccines really have causes. Is that true?
Right now, there's absolutely no evidence that vaccines are even an additive cause to any kind of disease like that.
Yeah, but as a caring doctor, you would still open your mind if you could find any justification for any concern, given studies, looking for any evidence, even vaccines, it could be a trigger to any neurological complication. Is that true?
Well, yes, I think everything is possible, and one should continue to look for things. But right now, there's absolutely no evidence that vaccines cause much in the way of neurological problems, and the diseases that the vaccines prevent against, there's tons of great evidence that they cause major neurological problems. The reason the chickenpox vaccine is one that I wasn't so keen on vaccinating everybody for is that typically you can get neurological problems from chickenpox, but typically when you get them, those improve, they go away. They're not permanent for the most part. There are cases where they are, but usually chickenpox is a relatively safe disease in children, and even if they get neurological complications from the disease itself, they usually, 99% of the time, evolve and go away.
When you look at studies, most of the time you see it's paid by a drug company. You probably don't even look at the study. You do what most people do. You look at what we call evidence-based studies, where someone draws up a study not to prove that his thinking is right, to go and say if there's a possibility in some area of evaluation, what conclusions that he and other people that will review the study make reasonable conclusions to, not prejudging and then doing a study. Is that correct?
Well, that's what you try to do, although unfortunately humans prejudge things even when they're not drug companies. There are studies to show that drug company drug trials are more likely to show efficacy. In other words, they're more likely to work to show that the drug or the vaccine works than a non-drug company trial. So it's already, so you know it's somewhat biased. But there are other potential reasons for that. So I think a lot of people actually look skeptically at drug trials. They're not all wrong. Some of them are great, and they've made tremendous advances. But I think one should be skeptical if someone's running a trial and has a financial advantage, and I think most people are. So when one looks at whether something works, you like to have other corroborative information as well. But unfortunately, there's not a lot of money to do all these trials, and drug companies are one of the ways that these things are funded, so we're sort of stuck with that. However, there is a bias. If you've already prejudged a drug and you're going to test it, you're more likely to show that it works, and I think we're all sort of know that drug company trials are potentially a little biased.
Could you say that's sort of like the bias of people against vaccine? They already made a decision, an opinion, so they're only going to look for stuff that backs up what they're thinking. But the smartest thinkers say, look, let me be a little humble, maybe look around at the overall picture, and maybe see what we can do for the benefit of all children. And I'm sure you're going to find some cases where a vaccine did do somehow. Not very often, but you can find them because there's no drug without side effects.
Yeah, well, I think that's what we try to do. I mean, the answer is, is it possible that a vaccine in 1 in 20,000 is an additive effect to something else that causes a problem that we can't pick up? Of course, that's always possible. We have to look for those things. But if you look at it from a global perspective, for example, measles, it's a real simple one. If you get measles, then you have a 1 in 1,000 chance of being profoundly retarded. And if you vaccinate and there's no other side to that question, then hard not to say, let's give a measles shot to everybody.
I mean, if I had an autistic kid or a neurologically impaired kid that no one gave me an answer for, I would be suspicious of everything. So I can understand that thinking.
Sure.
And I can understand people against vaccines. I respect that.